Krishna Kesava Paiman. Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Bhagavan Shri Krishna ki jai. Radha Madhava jai. Panchatat ki jai. Prahlad Singhdeva ki jai. Krishna book ki jai. So we're reading from the Krishna book by His Divine Grace of Boy Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is chapter 13, the killing of the Dhanuka Asura. Hare Krishna. Thus, Sri Krishna, along with his elder brother Balaram, passed the childhood age known as the Kumara and stepped into the age of Poganda. From the 6th year up to the 10th, at that time, all the cowherd men conferred and agreed to give the boys who had passed their 5th year charge of the cows in the pasturing ground. Giving charge of the cows, Krishna and Balaram traversed Vrindavan, purifying the land with their lotus footprints. Accompanied by the cowherd boys and Balaram, Krishna brought forward the cows and played on his flute as he entered the forest, which was full of flowers, vegetables, and pasturing grass. The Vrindavan forest was sanctioned as the clear mind of a devotee, and it was full of bees, flowers, and fruits. There were chirping birds, and clear water lakes and waters that could relieve one of all fatigue. Sweet-smelling breezes always blew, refreshing, and the mind and body of Krishna, with his friends and Balaram, entered the forests, and seeing the favorable situation, desired to enjoy the atmosphere to the fullest extent. Krishna saw that all the trees were overloaded with fruits and fresh twigs, bending down to touch the ground, as if welcoming him by touching his lotus feet. He was very pleased by the behavior of the fruit trees and the flowers, and he began to smile, realizing their desires. Krishna then spoke to his elder brother, Balaram, as follows. My dear brother, you are superior to all of us, and your lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods. Just see how these trees, full of fruits and flowers, have bent down to worship your lotus feet. It appears they are trying to get out of the darkness that has obliged them to accept the form of trees. Actually, the trees born in the land of Vrindavan are not ordinary living entities. Having held an impersonal point of view in their past lives, they have been put into this stationary condition of life. But now they have the opportunity of seeing you in Vrindavan, and they are praying for further advancement. in spiritual life through your personal association. Generally, living entities in the mode of darkness obtain the bodies of trees. The impersonal philosophers are in that darkness. But they eradicate that by taking full advantage of your presence. I think the drones that are buzzing around you must have been in their past lives, must have been devotees in their past lives. They cannot leave your company because no one can be a better and more affectionate master than you. You are the supreme and original personality of Godhead. And the drones appear as if they're just trying to touch. You are the supreme personality of Godhead, and the drones are just trying to spread your glories by chanting at every moment. I think some of them must have been great sages, devotees of your Lordship, and they are disguising themselves in the form of drones because they are unable to give up your company even for a moment. My dear brother, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just see how the peacocks are dancing before you in great ecstasy. The deer whose behavior is just like that of the gopis, welcoming you with the same affection, and the cuckoos who are residing in this forest are welcoming you with their joyful, sweet cries, because they consider that your appearance in their home is so auspicious. Even though they are trees and animals, these residents of Vrindavan are glorifying you. They are repeatedly welcoming you to the best of their ability, as is the practice of great souls in receiving another great soul at home. As far as the land, it is so pious and fortunate because footprints of your lotus feet are marking its body. It is quite natural for these Vrindavan inhabitants to thus receive a great personality like you. The herbs, creepers and plants are so fortunate to touch your lotus feet. And by your touching the twigs with your fingernails, these small plants are also made glorious. As for the hills and rivers, they too are now glorious because of touching and your glancing over them. Above all, the damsels of Braja, the gopis, are the most glorious, because you're embracing them with your strong arms, being attracted by their beauty. In this way, Lord Krishna and Balaram began enjoying the residents of Vrindavan to their full satisfaction. And they herded the calves and the cows on the bank of the Jamuna. In some places, Krishna and Balaram were accompanied by their friends. The boys were singing, imitating the humming sounds of the drones, and accompanying Krishna and Balaram, who were garlanded with forest flowers. While walking, the boys sometimes imitated the quacking sounds of the swans in the lakes. And when they saw the peacocks dancing, they imitated that. Before Krishna, Krishna also moved his neck, imitating the dancing and making his friends laugh. The cows taken care of by Krishna had different names, and Krishna would call them all with love. After hearing Krishna calling the cows would immediately respond by mooing, and the boys would enjoy this exchange to their heart's content. They would all imitate the sound vibration made by the different kinds of birds, especially chakoras, peacocks, cuckoos, and bhararajas. Sometimes they would see the weaker animals fleeing out of fear of the sounds of tigers. And lions. The boys, along with Krishna and Balaram, would imitate the animals and run with them. When they felt some fatigue, they would sit down and Balaram would put his head on the lap of one of the boys to take a rest. And Krishna would immediately come and begin massaging the legs of Balaram. And sometimes he would take a palm fan and fan the body of Balaram, causing a pleasing breeze to relieve him of his fatigue. Other boys would sometimes dance or sing while Balaram took rest, and sometimes they would wrestle amongst one another. Sometimes they would wrestle amongst themselves or jump. When the boys were thus engaged, Krishna would immediately join them and catch their hands. He would enjoy their company and laugh and praise their activities. When Krishna would feel tired and fatigued, he would sometimes take shelter of a root of a tree or the lap of a cowherd boy and lie down. When he would lie down with the boy or the root of as his pillow, some of the boys would come and massage his legs, and some would fan his body with a fan made from leaves. Some of the more talented boys would sing in sweet voices to please him. Thus very soon his fatigue would go away. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, whose legs are tended by the Goddess of Fortune, shared himself with the cowherd boys as one of them, expanding his internal potency to appear exactly like a village boy. But despite his appearing just like a village boy, there were occasions when he proved himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes men pose themselves as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and cheat innocent people, but they can only cheat. They cannot exhibit the potency of God. While Krishna was thus engaged in transcendental pastimes, exhibiting his internal potency in the company of his supermost fortunate cowherd boys, there occurred another chance for him to exhibit his superhuman powers of Godhead. His most intimate friend, Sri Dham, Shubal, and Stoka Krishna addressed Krishna and Balaram with great love and affection. Thus, "Dear Balaram, you are very powerful. Your arms are very strong. Dear Krishna, you are very expert in killing all kinds of disturbing demons. Will you kindly note that just near here, this place, there is a big forest with the name of Talavan. This forest is full of palm trees, and all the trees are filled with fruits. Some are falling down, and some of them are very ripe, even in the trees. It is a very nice place, but because of a great demon, Dhenukasura, it is very difficult to go there. No one can reach the trees to collect the fruits. Dear Krishna, this demon is present there in the form of an ass, and he is surrounded by similar demon friends who have assumed the same shapes. All of them are very strong, so it is very difficult to approach them. Dear brothers, you are the only persons who can kill such demons. Other than you, no one can go there for fear of being killed. Not even the animals go there, and no birds are living there. They have all left. One can only appreciate the sweet aroma that is coming from that place. It appears that up until now, no one has tasted the sweet fruit there, either on the tree or on the ground. Dear Krishna, to tell you quite frankly, we are very attracted by this sweet aroma. Dear Balaram, if you like, let us go there and enjoy these fruits. The aroma of the fruits is now spread everywhere. Don't you smell it from there, from here? When Balaram and Krishna were petitioned by their intimate friends, they were inclined to please them, and with smiling faces they proceeded towards the forest, surrounded by all their friends. Immediately, upon entering the forest of Talavan, Balaram began to yank the trees with his arms, exhibiting the strength of an elephant. Because of his jerking, all the ripe fruits fell down on the ground. Upon hearing the sound of the falling fruits, the demon Dhenukasura, who was living there in the form of an ass, approached with great force, shaking the whole field so that all the trees moved as if there had been an earthquake. The demon appeared before Balaram and kicked his chest with his hind legs. At first Balaram did not say anything, but with great anger the demon kicked him again more violently. This time Balaram immediately caught hold of the legs of the ass with one hand, wheeling him around, threw him into the treetops. While he was being wheeled around by Balaram, the demon lost his life. Balaram threw the demon into the biggest palm tree about, and the demon's body was so heavy that the palm tree fell upon it with others, and several fell down. It appears as if a great hurricane had passed through the forest, and all the trees were falling down one after another. This exhibition of extraordinary strength is not astonishing, because Balaram is the personality of Godhead, known as Ananta Sheshanag, who is holding all the planets on his hoods of his millions of heads. He maintains the whole cosmic manifestation exactly as horizontal and vertical threads hold the weaving of a cloth. After the demon had been thrown into this tree, all the friends and associates of Dhenukasura immediately assembled and attacked Balaram and Krishna with great force. They were determined to retaliate the avenge of the death of their friend. But Krishna and Balaram caught each of the asses by the hind legs, exactly in the same way, wheeled them around. Thus they killed all the demons and then threw them into the palm trees. Because of the dead bodies of the asses, there was a panoramic scene. It appears as if the clouds of various colors were assembled in the trees. Hearing the great incidents, the demigods from the higher planets showered flowers on Krishna and Balaram and beat their drums and offered devotional prayers. A few days after the killing of Dhenukasura, people began to come to the Talavan forest to collect the fruits and flowers, and animals began to return there without fear to feed on the nice grasses growing here and there. Just by chance of hearing of these transcendental activities and pastimes of the brothers Krishna and Balaram, one can amass pious activities. When Krishna and Balaram and their friends entered the village of Vrindavan, they played on their flutes. And the boys praised their uncommon activities in the forest. Their faces were decorated with tilak and smeared with the dust raised by the cows, and Krishna's head was decorated with a peacock feather. Both he and Balaram played the flutes, and the young gopis were joyous to see Krishna returning home. All the gopis of Vrindavan remained very morose on account of Krishna's absence. All day they were thinking of Krishna in the forest, or of him herding cows in the pasture. When they saw Krishna returning all their anxieties were immediately relieved, and they began to look upon his face the way that drones they began to look at his face the way that drones hover over and began to look at the way that drones hover over the honey of the lotus flower. When Krishna entered the village, the young gopis smiled and laughed. Krishna was playing the flute, enjoyed the beautiful, smiling faces of the gopis. Then Krishna and Balaram were immediately received by their affectionate mothers, Jasoda and Rohini, who, according to the time's demands, began to fulfill the desires of their affectionate sons. Simultaneously, the mothers received the services and bestowed benediction upon all their transcendental sons. They took care of their children by bathing them and dressing them very nicely. Krishna was dressed in yellowish garments and Balaram was dressed in bluish garments. And there were all sorts of ornaments and flower garlands. Being relieved of the fatigue of their day's work in the pasturing ground, they looked refreshed and very beautiful. They were given palatable dishes by their mothers, and they pleasantly ate everything. After eating, they were seated nicely on the clean bedding. Then the mothers began to sing various songs of their activities. As soon as they lay down on the bedding, they very quickly fell fast asleep. In this way, Krishna and Balaram used to enjoy the Vrindavan life as a cowherd boy. Sometimes Krishna would go with his boyfriends and Balaram, and sometimes he would go alone with his friends to the bank of the Jamuna and tend the cows. Gradually, the summer season arrived, and one day while in the field, the boys' cows became very thirsty and began to drink the water of the Jamuna. The river, however, had been made poisonous by the venom of the great serpent known as Kaliya. Because of the water was so poisonous, the boys and cows became visibly affected after drinking. They suddenly fell down on the ground, apparently dead. Then Krishna, who is the life of all that lives, simply cast his merciful glance over them, and all the boys and cows regained their consciousness again. And they began to look at each other with great astonishment. They could understand that by drinking the water of the Jamuna, they had died, and that the merciful glance of Krishna had restored their lives. Thus they appreciated the mystic power of Krishna, who is known as Yogeshwar, the master of all mystic yogis. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 15th chapter on Krishna, the killing of the Dhenukasura. Chapter 16. Subduing Kaliya. When he understood the water of the Jamuna was being polluted by the black serpent Kaliya, Lord Krishna took action against him and made him leave the Jamuna and go elsewhere, and thus the water became purified. When this story was being narrated by Shukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit began to hear more about Krishna's childhood pastimes. He inquired from Shukadeva Goswami how Krishna chastised Kaliya, who had been living in the water for many years. Actually, Maharaj Parikshit was becoming more and more enthusiastic to hear the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, and his inquiry was made with great interest. Shukadeva Goswami narrated the story as follows. Within the water of the Jamuna there was a great lake, and in that lake was a black serpent, Kaliya, used to live. Because of his poison, the whole area was so contaminated that it emanated a poisonous vapor 24 hours a day. If a bird happened to pass even over the spot, he would immediately fall down and die in the water. Due to the poisonous effect, of the Jamuna's vapors. The trees and grass near the bank of the Jamuna had all dried up. Lord Krishna saw the effect of the great serpent's poison. The whole river now that ran before Vrindavan was now deadly. Krishna, who invented himself just to kill the materialistic elements of the world, immediately climbed up into a big kadamba tree on the bank of the Jamuna. The kadamba is a tree bearing round yellow flowers and generally only seen in the Vrindavan area. After climbing the top of the tree, he tightened his belt and flapping his arms just like a wrestler, he jumped into the midst of the poisonous lake. The kadamba tree from which Krishna jumped was the only tree there that was not dead. Some commentators say that due to being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, the tree immediately became alive. And in some other Puranas it stated that Garuda, the eternal carrier of Vishnu, knew that Krishna would take this action in the future, and so he put some nectar on the tree to preserve it. When Krishna jumped into the water, the river overflooded its banks to a distance of 100 yards, as if something very large had fallen into it. This exhibition of Krishna's strength is not at all uncommon, because he is the reservoir of all strength. When Krishna was swimming around like a great strong elephant, he made a tumultuous sound which the great black serpent could hear. The tumult was intolerable for him, and he could understand that this was an attempt to attack his home. Therefore he immediately came out before Krishna. Kaliya saw that Krishna was indeed worth seeing because his body was so beautiful and delicate. Its color resembled that of a cloud, and its feet resembled the lotus flower. He was decorated with a Srivatsa jewel, yellow garments. He was smiling with a beautiful face and playing in the river Jamuna with great strength. But in spite of Krishna's beautiful features, Kaliya felt great anger within his heart. And thus he grabbed Krishna in his mighty coils. Seeing the incredible way in which Krishna was enveloped with coils of the serpent, the affectionate cowherd boys and other inhabitants of Vrindavan immediately became stunned out of fear. They had dedicated everything to Krishna. Their lives, property, affection, activities, everything was for Krishna. And when they saw him in that condition, they became overwhelmed with fear and fell down on the ground. All of the cows and bulls and small calves came overwhelmed with grief. They began to look at him with great anxiety. Out of fear, they could not cry. They could only cry in agony and stand erect on the bank, unable to help their beloved Krishna. While seeing this was taking place on the bank of the Jamuna, there were ill omens manifested. The earth trembled, meteors fell from the sky, and from the left side of men's bodies shivered. All these are indications that a great immediate danger. Observing the inauspicious signs, the cowherd men, including Nanda Maharaj, became very anxious out of fear. At the same time, they were informed that Krishna had gone to the pasturing ground without his elder brother Balaram. As soon as Nanda and Jasoda and the cowherd men heard this news, they became even more anxious. Out of their great affection for Krishna and being unaware of the extent of his potencies, they became overwhelmed with grief and anxiety because they had nothing dearer than Krishna, and because they had dedicated their everything, life, property, affection, mind, and activities to Krishna. Because of their great attachment for Krishna, they thought, today Krishna is surely going to be vanquished. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan came out of the village to see Krishna. The assembly consisted of children, old men, women, animals, and all living entities. They knew that Krishna was their only means of sustenance. While this was happening, Balaram, who is the master of all knowledge, stood there simply smiling. He knew how powerful his younger brother was, and there was no cause for anxiety when Krishna was fighting with an ordinary serpent in the material world. He did not therefore personally take part in their sorrow. On the other hand, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, being disturbed, began to search out Krishna by following the impression of his footprints on the ground. And thus they moved hastily towards the bank of the Jamuna. Finally, by following the footprints marked with a flag, bow and conch shell, the inhabitants of Vrindavan arrived on the river bank and saw that all the cows and boys were weeping to behold Krishna wrapped in the coils of the black serpent. Then they became more overwhelmed with grief, while Balaram was smiling to see their lamentation. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan merged into an ocean of grief because they thought that Krishna was finished. Although the residents of Vrindavan did not know much about Krishna, their love for him was beyond comparison. And as soon as they saw Krishna in the river Jamuna, enveloped by the serpent Kaliya, and that all the boys and cows were lamenting, they simply began to think of Krishna's friendship, his smiling face, his sweet words, his dealings with them. Thinking of all of these and seeing their Krishna was now in the clutches of Kaliya, they at once felt that the three worlds become vacant. Lord Chaitanya also said that he was seeing the three worlds as vacant for want of Krishna. This is the highest stage of Krishna consciousness. Almost all the inhabitants of Vrindavan had the highest ecstatic love for Krishna. When Mother Jasoda arrived, she wanted to enter the river Jamuna, but being checked, she fainted. Her friends were equally aggrieved. They were shedding tears like torrents of rain or the waves of a river. But in order to bring Mother Jasoda to consciousness, they began to speak loudly about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Mother Jasoda remained still as if dead, because her consciousness was concentrated on the face of Krishna. Nanda and all the other cowherd men who had dedicated everything, including their lives, to Krishna, were ready to enter into the water of the Jamuna. But Lord Balaram checked them, because he was in perfect knowledge that there was no danger. For 2 hours, Krishna remained like an ordinary child, gripped in the coils of Kaliya. But when he saw that all the inhabitants of Gokula, including his mother and father, the gopis, the boys and the cows, were all on the point of death, and they had no other shelter for salvation from imminent death, Krishna, he immediately freed himself and began to expand his body. And when the serpent tried to hold him, he felt great strain. On account of the strain, the coils slackened. He had no other alternative but to let loose the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, from his grasp. Kaliya then became very angry, and his great hoods expanded. He exhaled poisonous fumes from his nostrils. His eyes blazed like fire, and flames issued from his mouth. The great serpent remained still for some time, looking at Krishna, licking his lips with his bifurcated tongues. The serpent looked at Krishna with double hoods, and his eyesight was full of poison. Krishna immediately pounced on him, just like Garuda swoops on a snake. Thus attacked, Kaliya looked for an opportunity to bite him, but Krishna moved around him. As Krishna and Kaliya moved in a circle, the serpent gradually became fatigued, and all his strength seemed to diminish considerably. Krishna immediately pressed down the serpent's hoods and jumped up on them. The Lord's lotus feet became tinged with the red from the rays of the jewels on the snake's hoods. And he, who is the original artist of all fine arts, such as dancing, began to dance on the hoods of the serpent, although they were moving to and fro. Upon seeing this, the denizens of the upper planets showered flowers, beat drums, played different types of flutes, and sang various prayers and songs. In this way, all the denizens of heaven, such as the Gandharvas, Siddhas, demigods, all became very pleased. While Krishna was dancing on the hoods, Kaliya tried to push him down with some of the other hoods. Kaliya had about 100 hoods, but Krishna took control of them. He began to dash Kaliya with his lotus feet, and this was more than the serpent could bear. Gradually, Kaliya was reduced to struggling for his very life. He vomited all kinds of refuse and exhaled fire while throwing up poisonous material from within. Kaliya became reduced in his sinful situation. Out of great anger, he began to struggle for existence and tried to raise one of his hoods to kill the Lord. The Lord immediately captured the hood and subdued it by kicking it and dancing on it. It actually appeared as if the Supreme Personality of Godhead was being worshipped by the poisons emanating from the mouth. It actually appeared as if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, was being worshipped. The poisons emanating from the mouth of the serpent appeared like flower offerings. Kaliya then began to vomit blood and poison, and he was completely fatigued. His whole body appeared to be broken by the kicks of the Lord. Within his mind, however, he finally began to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he surrendered unto him. He realized that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the Master of everything. The wives of Kaliya serpent, known as Nagnapatis, saw their husband had been subdued by the Lord's kicking, and that he was almost on the point of death due to bearing the heavy burden of the Lord, within whose abdomen the whole universe remains. Kaliya's wives prepared to worship the Lord, and in their haste, their clothes, hair, and ornaments become disarrayed. They also surrendered unto the Supreme Lord and began to pray. They appeared before him, putting forward their offspring and anxiously offering respectful obeisances. Falling down on the bank of the Jamuna, the Nagnapatis knew that Krishna is the shelter of the surrendered souls, and they desired to release their husband from the impending danger by pleasing the Lord with their prayers. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Book ki jai. Bhagavan Shri Krishna ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Hare Bol.